Alright guys, so this is SSD, Sustainable Self-Development, a podcast for people who want to get ahead in fitness and in life without driving themselves crazy. So if you want to look up a year from now and think, damn, I came a long way, but you don't want to burn out in the process as you get there, you came to the right place. We'll get into today's episode in just a second, but just want to let you know that we have an awesome community on Facebook in the form of a group which you can join, where we discuss and debate things, drop ideas, debate over which person to interview for the next podcast, and all that good stuff. So go to Facebook, type in Sustainable Self-Development, or you can just check the show notes here and click the link there, and you'll find the Sustainable Self-Development Facebook group and you can join. Also, not sure where you're listening to this right now, but this podcast is available on a variety of platforms: iTunes, SoundCloud, Podbeam, and YouTube. You can find it on all of these platforms if you just type in Sustainable Self-Development, because luckily nobody is weird enough to name themselves in such a way except me. So look me up on these places and follow the show by subscribing so that you don't miss future episodes. And with that, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Today, I am super excited to welcome a guest that I wanted to have on for a long time. I am talking with nutritionist, one of the top educators in the health and fitness space, former natural bodybuilder, and still to this day, a very active public figure in the industry. Just a beast at calling people out in a polite and respectful way, and the owner and creator of an online university, which is pretty cool. And also, at least at some point, has been referred to as the most well-known nutritionist in Britain. We will dig into that, whether that's still recent. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to Martin Nutrition MacDonald. So Martin, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hi, Bill. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So first of all, let's start with that. So are you still currently the most well-known British nutritionist?
Goodness. It has been said, yeah. I don't know how to quantify that. I suppose Britain, UK is a relatively small island, so it's not a big title. But yeah, my name is certainly growing. I think I've been around for, some people have only heard about me in the last maybe 3 years and like, oh yeah, you're an overnight success. Yeah. Some people are saying, I was like, oh man, I've been doing this for like 13 years or something. But yeah, it's nice that kind of, I suppose, through social media, through, launching Mac Nutrition Uni, it's people are talking about me and my business online a lot more. And even through the, appearing on podcasts like these, people getting to know my work and those kind of things. It's just, things have grown, and it's really nice for me for that's happening.
Yeah. And, certainly, the whole overnight success thing, we don't have to dig into that. Like, people just see the tip of the iceberg. But, listening to podcasts with you and seeing some of your appearances, you strike me definitely as a confident guy, but at the same time, I can tell that you're a pretty humble person and you're down to earth. You don't like to brag. So maybe with this first question of mine, I can push you out of your comfort zone just a little bit. So, looking at your success and the things that have gone well for you over the last, decade or so, what would you say are the couple of big factors? And perhaps a more concrete question here would be, what quality of yours is it that kind of separates you from the crowd or makes you really top class in your field?
Wow. Goodness. So I've got to agree that I'm top class. Okay. I suppose more than anything else, what maybe differentiates me, there's two parts to it. One, what differentiates me and what's allowed me to be, quote unquote, successful. The success side has come from, being committed to a cause, I suppose, for a long, long period of time. The overnight success thing is, okay, things have gone massive, blown up. And I think a lot of people see it as monetary success, whereas prior to that, I was respected by people who I wanted to be respected by. Now it's just a much broader reach. Those big time people with big followings who respected me in private and respected my knowledge and my work had then started talking about me, or other people have started talking about me. And then these big names that they maybe already knew were like, yeah, Martin's great. And it's like, oh, wow, these big names respect him. He must be good. So the commitment to the cause of evidence-based nutrition. I actually said this on my Instagram story yesterday, that for a decade or more, I've been calling out pseudoscience, bad practice, the rubbish that exists within the health and fitness industry. But at the beginning of my career, I got a lot of fight back. I got insults. Oh, who are you to call that out? Don't try and bring other people down to build yourself up, which does hurt someone like me. I try to please everyone, which isn't always a good thing. But at the same time, there's a cost. I think, I'm going to hurt someone's feelings if I call them out, but I believe there's a greater good of the fact that their misinformation is hurting other people. So, but fast forward 10 years, if I call people out now, everyone's like, yeah, you're a hero. It's do it. Everyone's behind you, and no one says to me now, oh, you're trying to push others down. But I'm just doing exactly the same, but I've just got a bigger name myself. So realistically, now you could see me as more of a bully. Like, I think the definition of bullying is using a greater position of influence to harm someone else. But back then I had no influence, but now I do. But realistically, I believe these things there are people out there knowingly ripping people off. There are people out there who are maybe unknowingly giving out misinformation, and I don't go out and be nasty to people. I try and help them to understand where they're going wrong and why, telling people all of these silly things that we hear in the fitness industry are wrong, and they are, say, disempowering messages, and they maybe leave their clients in a worse place. But the commitment to that over a long period of time, I have had a relatively, what's the word, kind of blinkered view. Like, my life has been about nutrition, my hobby, my work, everything. My family have been brought into it. So it's been a long period of time that's led me to just this goal of, I want to make it sound a bit grand, change the world. I want to leave a lasting legacy of people basing things on science. Like, when I started in this industry, you got into as a personal trainer, a coach, a nutritionist, and you did whatever the hell you wanted. Like, this is what everyone, even now, people join the industry. Yeah. Oh, I've heard the best thing is low carb. I've heard the best thing is paleo. And they think that it's okay to just go, yep, I'm going to put all my clients on that because that's the latest thing, rather than starting from a point of, what is the body of evidence say? What is the most efficient and effective, through time and money, way to get a client to improve their health, to improve their life, to get results. So that in part. And then I think the other thing what's differentiated me is I am willing to make other people feel a little bit uncomfortable. So, but also at the detriment to myself. So I have quite famously been in some like lawsuits and these different kind of things because I've called bad practice out. And it's been, it has really, really affected my personal health, my mental health, my life being in these situations. But I believe for the greater good. So, I am willing to go out and call people out, and everyone's like, oh, you're a bit of a troll. Oh, I can't believe you said that. And so I suppose, that's where I'm differentiated. Lots of people just, oh, you need to be positive. People like positivity. Whereas I'm slightly different in that I will call stuff out, whether people like it or not. And, that's benefited me in some ways. I have a really, really strong, loyal following, but maybe I don't have the size of following that I could have if I was a bit more happy-go-lucky all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of the size of your following, I heard someone, I actually forgot who it was, say that once you reach a certain level of success, you need to differentiate between the things that you do for free and the things that you do for money. And I'm assuming that for someone like you, educating and helping people to achieve their goals is what you would do for free. Luckily, you don't have to. You're making a good living from it. But did you find that over time you had to do more and more things that you just have to do, and that are sort of the things that you don't enjoy doing but have to get done? I'm asking this because the other day I've heard you mention somewhere that over time you had to get good at online marketing and these sorts of things.
Yeah, interesting. One thing about me is, whilst I love nutrition, I actually really love, 1, numbers, and 2, business. So, as soon as I got my degree, I got my master's, I got my postgraduate, and I went self-employed instantly. I had some jobs that were like lecturing at the university, but they were just kind of sidelines for my bigger goal. And so yes, I love business, but I don't like marketing. And the people that I don't like in the industry care more about, say, marketing than they do about science or doing right by other people. So I actually, at the beginning of my career, I had a bit of a thing against making money. And that was a really bad way to go about things. I almost felt bad charging for my advice or productizing anything. I wanted everything 100% bespoke, which then cost me loads of time, but I didn't want to charge people too much. So it just wasn't viable.
Right.
So yeah, I think people do need to learn about marketing. They do need to learn to do those things. With regards to doing stuff for free, funnily, I've always done loads for free. I have a bit of a saying that I teach on any of my mentorships is say no to nothing. And so far, I'm still pretty much maintaining that. I mean, I get asked probably weekly to go on the radio. And I've started turning that down now because there's no point. I'm reaching the same people. They're kind of not necessarily people who are even listening. But I'm still, doing free Facebook Lives. And kind of people say to me, oh yeah, but you are marketing when you do a Facebook Live. And I sort of say to them, if I was about money or if I was about marketing, I would just sit down. I would spend that time either working with a client who wants to pay me silly money or just doing Facebook ads. But I like the element of our business that has been true for the last decade of we want to, our one-on-one consultancy for nutrition is very, very expensive, but being able to give back, write free articles, give back free Q&As for people who don't have enough money to get decent advice, even with the NHS in the UK, they're not getting good nutrition advice. So yeah, I probably now, and like you said it before we went online, I've got a team of staff now, which is fantastic because I can do the stuff I enjoy. I can do stuff for free. I can do podcasts like this, which yes, does benefit the business, but my staff are through there working, organizing this podcast for me, doing the nuts and bolts of things. So, for me, it's a case of I want to do a world tour or a UK tour and a world tour on nutrition, and I don't really need to make any money from that. So it's really nice that I'll get to travel, B, get to meet people, C, give people some good information, and my business will still run, and I'll be able to reach more people and do kind of what's my personal goal to I suppose, that grand thing of change the world.
Right. And when speaking of changing the world, or at least changing lives of individuals, I found it really, I had to laugh or just kind of smile when I heard you mention that it's kind of a funny disconnect between belonging to this science savvy crowd that you're belonging to, but at the same time it poses this kind of funny pressure when you walk into a conference room and you have to give a presentation to these evidence-based practitioners, and it's really hard to say something new to them. And at the same time, when you talk to Gen Pop people, saying something like, you don't have to eat breakfast is going to blow everybody's minds. Yeah. So with that, these days, which brings you more pleasure, talking to the more Gen Pop crowd or the more elite performers, bodybuilders, that sort of crowd?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Wow. I think I love both of it still. I mean, I love public speaking, and actually on my world tour, I'm going to call it, I want to have, this is exclusive information, Abel. This is like behind the scenes stuff. Yeah. Basically, we had the discussion last week that what I'm probably going to do is, say Saturdays through the year, different countries, different cities, and put on 6 hours worth of education content. And the first, say 2, will be a topic that is specific to Gen Pop, is pitched at Gen Pop, but it's like I don't want to say the basics of nutrition, but it's nutrition 101. It's kind of myth busting, body composition stuff, the stuff that is going to hit a lot of those buttons. So that will be the one where PTs, trainers, nutritionists, everyone who follows me, they can come and listen to, but they can also bring their clients. But I will also be marketing at people in the general public to come and get this 2 hours of information. But then the next 4 hours will then be the higher level stuff, 2 hours on, an advanced topic of programming or something, and another 2 hours on something else. So yeah, from that perspective, it's a case of I don't want to get rid of either, because I absolutely love changing the lives of individuals who aren't in the industry. But I suppose in a way I've seen my career at a point where I can help trainers and nutritionists be more effective in what they do. So in essence, their client results become a little bit to do with me. So rather than me being able to work with 100 people, I can help 100 trainers who each have 100 clients, and it's just exponential. So yeah, I love both of it. I love still telling people and seeing their faces when you go, do you know what? You don't have to eat breakfast, or something as silly as that, versus telling, an evidence-based practitioner, do you know what? You can diet someone aggressively and you're not a bro. You're not going to harm someone if you do it like this. Or, telling someone who's kind of fairly advanced, do you know what? Muscle loss doesn't need to be a major consideration for you if you do things right like this. Like, I love it all. I love nutrition and I love speaking to people. So yeah, awesome.
And that sounds very cool what you just mentioned that's coming up. So thank you for giving that behind the scenes information here.
That's all right.
And with that, thank you for giving me the transition there, because I definitely, just a week ago I was talking to Lyle MacDonald on my podcast about some of the ins and outs and kind of some of the techniques behind aggressive dieting, and discussing his work on rapid fat loss. And cool. But we haven't talked specifically about the why of aggressive dieting. We only talked about the how. And you were one of the first people in the evidence-based crowd from whom I heard this idea of aggressive dieting being actually pitched. So, if you had to kind of give a general pitch for aggressive dieting, what would that be in a general sense?
Sure, yeah. So this is one of those things, like you said, I find it hard to wow the evidence-based crowd, because there's myself and other evidence-based guys putting out content on the internet, and everyone's just lapping it up, reading it, listening to all the podcasts.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are they doing? I need to consider, how can I still help them get better? And this is where this came from, was I saw too many evidence-based guys being too moderate. It was this idea that, if you put someone in a big calorie deficit, they're going to adapt to it super quick and not lose weight. And which is not evidence-based. It's not based on the science. What it's based on is their idea of the bros in the industry, people who don't coach people. They put people on stupid diets, really, really restrictive diets, not even necessarily calorie restriction, but overly restricting foods that are unnecessary to restrict. You won't lose weight if you eat gluten. You won't lose weight if you eat dairy, all these silly things that exist. Mm-hmm. But the evidence-based crowd, they want to help people. They don't want to metabolically damage them, which we know doesn't really exist, but they just want to be nice. They want to be good people. So I basically said this phrase, which caused a lot of controversy, which was, I think this is right, diet people on as few calories as they can realistically maintain to take them to their goal. I think that's, almost verbatim anyway. And the reason for this is that some people do great. Like, the science, even on general population individuals, is that very often more aggressive strategies get better results long term. So people are like, if you crash diet, you'll regain all of the weight and more. And everyone's, nodding, yeah, that's evidence-based, that sounds correct, that's common sense. And then you go, okay, find a study that shows that. They're not there. Then you look at the studies, okay, fast versus slow rate weight loss, 0.5% versus 1%, all of these different studies that have been done. And then you get some crazy findings in the research. The more aggressive diet, the greater the calorie deficit. And it's like, the fast rate weight loss group had lower hunger. And it's like, what? How is that possible? But this is what the research tells us. And there's various mechanisms that we could use to explain those findings. But realistically, what you're asking me is the why. Why would we do it? Well, because people seem to get better results, and they seem to maintain more of their weight loss, or they seem to maintain a greater level of weight loss after the longer period. So if you get a group losing at a slow rate and you get a group losing at a fast rate, even if both groups regain some of their weight, there's a really interesting study which basically said the fast rate of weight loss group a greater percentage of that group maintained a clinically significant weight loss after 12 months. And the reason for that is because they lost more weight. So even though every single person in that study regained some weight, the ones who had just lost more to begin with were maintaining more of that weight loss after a year. So I just wanted to bring this back. I don't want to promote it as the best thing. And I reckon some people listening right now will have gone, oh, he's promoting this as the best and only way to do it. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, don't discount it as a possible method for a new client or yourself. So when I said this, I don't know when it was, a couple of years ago, suddenly I see trainers and PTs and just general population, or they're tagging me in their Instagram and their Facebook posts. Oh my goodness, I've been doing your eaters, and I started making a joke out of it. I started calling it the eat as few calories as you can diet trademark. People are like, oh, I've been doing the Martin MacDonald eat as few calories as you can diet, and I'm getting shredded. And it's like, well, of course you are. But then people say, oh, we're going to lose muscle mass. And that's the second part of it, if you don't mind me going on to that as well, is people are obsessed with the fact or with the idea that they're going to lose muscle if they diet hard. And, I'm going to pick out the popular one, the Longlens study, which showed 40% calorie deficit. I believe in that study, it was a 1,200 calorie deficit that was the average between the subjects, so a 40% deficit. And on 1.2 grams per kilogram protein, which is, run for the hill stuff if you're a fitness industry person, like, oh my goodness, you're going to lose all your muscle if you eat that much protein. They maintained muscle mass, and the high group on 2.4 grams per kilogram increased muscle mass. Now, there's certain nuances with that study that I'm not going to bother going into. It's just a proof of concept. I'm not telling anyone to eat 1.2, but I'm telling people, eat adequate protein, maintain a decent quality of resistance training, and then do a deficit that you can maintain. If you're someone who's going to restrict calories and start binging on, you're psychologically not in the right place, don't do it. It's not magic. But, I've just about 5 or 6 days ago, no, 7 now actually, started doing this diet for, 4 weeks. I will only have to diet for 4 weeks, whereas me in the olden days, because I've made mistakes, so many stupid mistakes, eating 7 meals a day to boost my metabolism type mistakes. Yeah. And I am now eating 12 to 1,400 calories a day. And actually, I'm generally quite good at eating low calorie, but I've been starving. But I get on the scales and I've been losing almost a pound a day in the last 7 days. Yeah. And that's hugely motivating. I know that's not all body fat, but it's hugely motivating. What I'm doing is working. I'm going to be significantly leaner in 4 weeks. And in 4 weeks, I can jump my calories all the way back to maintenance, and I'll be 3 times more shredded than the olden days Martin, who would have been dieting on a little deficit. And also, I was really hungry to begin with, but now my appetite is subsiding massively. And, today, what time are we on? 3:30 in the afternoon. I've eaten 200 calories today, and I feel great. And people say, oh, doesn't it affect your energy levels? Doesn't it impact your cognition? It's like, hopefully people can see my brain's working not too bad anyway. So yeah, this is the thing. I'm just trying to open people's mind a little bit to what are the reasons not to do it? Muscle loss. Well, that's unlikely if you've got some body fat. And this is another thing, actually. If you're a bodybuilding competitor, if you are very lean already, and I mean really lean, like sub 10% on a DEXA, not 10%, I'm just going to show my leanest body part in the mirror on Facebook. I make this joke. People in Lyle's Facebook group, they'll post up like a picture of their back, if their back's their leanest body part, or a picture of their abs, if their abs are really lean, or their quads, if that's their, and go, guys, just wondering if you give me, what percent body fat do you think I am? It's like, I can see 15% of your body. How am I going to judge your body fat percentage? But yeah, on a DEXA, 10% is really, really lean. And if you're at that level of leanness, muscle loss starts to become an issue. And this is where tapering your deficit, reducing your deficit, and I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, and I think Greg Nuckols has written an article on this, but a really, really, really conservative deficit is divide your percentage body fat by 20, and that is the percentage of your body weight that you can lose per week. So you calculate the approximate deficit required to do that, and that will minimize muscle loss to the maximal level that your, say, genetics will entail. Right. I actually think you can push that figure of 20 down to 15, which actually means up in the rate of weight loss. So divide your percent body fat by 15, And at that level, so if you're 30% body fat, you can lose 2% of your body weight a week, which, if you're I'm going to make the maths easy for myself, 100 kilos, that's like 4 kilos. Yeah. I was going to convert it to pounds to make it sound better, but it's a seriously, whatever that is, 4.4 pounds a week of body fat you can lose and not lose any muscle. So yeah, this is the why. It can be effective. There's very little reasons not to do it. If you can't stick to it, do not do it. If you can, do it within the constructs that I've just said, and you'll get shredded quicker and go back to maintenance sooner.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. No, that was great. And you sparked a couple of thoughts in my head, one of which is, I've done really aggressive fat loss phases in the past. And what you just mentioned about being a pound lighter, that's a very nice, almost kind of a positive reinforcement daily. Like you might be suffering a little bit more day to day, but the next day you can literally look leaner, and that's people are willing to suffer, push a little bit for visible results, and that's not the case with more moderate deficits. So that's a great one. Yeah. And
just on that front, just to say, is like, if people are listening to this who have their own clients, you don't have to pick one method. You could literally put in a week of this. So you've got someone on a moderate deficit. And when things are more moderate, or you're doing diet breaks, because the other thing I like about this is if you diet someone aggressively, you can go back to maintenance for a week, 2 weeks, however long, and teach someone what it's like to live at maintenance whilst their motivation is super high. Like if someone pays you money, they're going to work with you for 12 weeks. That whole 12 weeks are in a deficit. You do not once teach them really about weight maintenance and lifelong habits, because the only habits that you're instilling are specific to weight loss. So even though eat more veg, you've probably taught them that, but you've taught them that in the constructs of losing weight, not, okay, you're not going to be hungry, you're going to eat at maintenance, but you're still going to eat protein at this meal, and you're still going to eat veg at this meal, and you're still going to prepare like this, and etc. And these are portions. So if you diet someone hard, twice as hard, twice as much of the time, they can be at maintenance and still get the same rate of progress. So you don't have to hammer someone all the time, but like you say, it's super motivating. Right, next week we're going to go really aggressive, you're going to feel leaner every day, the scale's going to go down, you're going to be more hungry, but it's only going to last a week or 2 weeks or however long. Then we're going to go back to maintenance or a small deficit, etc., etc., etc. So it doesn't have to be the only tool in your box. Even with a client, even if they can handle aggressive, you can do more maintenance stuff as well.
Yeah, and I think what you just mentioned is such a critical point, and that's one of my pet peeves, is that the practicing of maintenance, because that was going to be one of my questions to you, is I've heard you mention a couple of times that we have to distinguish between a temporary period in which we are pushing towards a goal and how we are going to live long term, and that's 100% right, but it has to come with a caveat that when you push aggressively for a specific goal, then we also need dedicated periods in which we are actually learning long-term sustainable lifestyle strategies. And then from that vein, would you say that potentially pushing twice as hard maybe for a week and then taking a period of maintenance is superior to pushing half as hard for 2 weeks and no maintenance whatsoever, even though math-wise in the long term the two might come out at the same end result?
That's such an interesting question, partly because of the Matador study that came out recently. Yeah. And it's quite exciting for anyone who isn't aware. The Matador study essentially did what Abel said there about they did 2 weeks of deficit, 2 weeks of maintenance versus just a consistent deficit. And for whatever reason, the speculation is potentially a reduction in the adaptive processes that occur with dieting. Whilst we would expect them to come out in the same place, the cyclical or undulating energy availability or deficit, etc., came off better. So it's a really interesting one. Based on that study, we could say, yes, cyclical methods are better. You need to, you could do 1 and 1, you could do 2 and 2, whatever you do. There might be optimization of that study protocol. You might be able to go, right, 2 to 3 weeks hard, 1 week maintenance. And because of maintenance, and I'm going to be speaking this year I'm going to create a talk, a presentation that, I don't know, I might give out on one of my email lists. And the title is going to be something like aggressive refeeding strategies to overcome fat loss plateaus. And it will deal with some of the data and the stuff that's being alluded to in the Matador study of how can we not necessarily just go back to maintenance, but look at aggressive refeeding, aggressive overfeeding within certain constructs to undermine these adaptive processes that go on with dieting. You know, people say, oh, calories don't count because, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this ridiculous stuff, but, you know, when you count calories, your body knows that you're starving it, so it lowers your metabolism. Like, oh my goodness, as if your body is listening to your words in your head. Like, these things happen through negative feedback loops and messengers and hormonal signals. It's nothing to do with whether you're counting the calories themselves. It's the fact that your body is seeing the flux of energy within the body, and it's in a negative thing. So homeostasis comes into play. So can we almost, I mean, I've got this thing I talk about on Instagram, shock the body, but not shocking the body, but tricking the body, or working in a way that we feed it at certain periods where it hasn't got these signals of famine, and it's not trying to protect our fat stores, and therefore we can get leaner, easier, more efficiently, more effectively. So yeah, that's something I'm going to create, but it's exactly what you've alluded to there. Is there a difference? Potentially, yeah. We have some data that is coming out that's showing that cyclical method may well be better. So yeah, aggressive versus aggressive and light, so cyclical versus just a consistent bog standard same energy deficit. And I mean, physique competitors have been doing this in a way for a long time. They have their refeed meals or refeed days, and the amount of calories some people are able to consume on that day, it probably means that they've undone about 3 days worth of deficit. So in that instance, you could call that cyclical, but it's being a bit more specific about it. It's putting it in specific periods and only going, it's having a particular macro split that's more beneficial maybe to resetting parts of, hormonal adaptations, parts of metabolism, increasing total daily energy expenditure through increases in things like NEAT, for a more favorable outcome when you go back into your deficit phase.
Yeah, that's very cool. And just to backtrack for 1 second, because it reminded me you mentioned how the worries and concerns about muscle loss are usually largely overblown. And you mentioned this divide your body fat percentage by 15 as kind of an aggressive but reasonable guideline. And I'm sure, as you know, some people will still try to negotiate these figures. And, even when we talk about what can you realistically maintain, there's always going to be that one crazy person who can eat nothing for a month. It's not common, but those people are out there. And do you think, to what extent is it potentially even worth, math-wise in the long term, risking even potentially some muscle loss if it means a faster rate of weight loss? For what it's worth, last summer, I actually, over the course of maybe about less than 4 weeks, I would say I went from about 16% body fat to a pretty darn shredded, I would say very close to single digits, but definitely not more than 10%. Yeah. Maybe I lost some muscle in the process, but once I filled out and I added back in calories, I looked better than ever. So what do you think is the kind of trade-off math looks like here?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And this is something, I spoke on Danny Lennon's podcast, and when he was kind of summarizing me, he said, once you've dieted aggressively, you get back to maintenance quicker, you get back to even maybe a small surplus quicker, and your training, hopefully improves and all of these kind of things. And regaining lost muscle or regaining lost lean tissue, we've got I don't know if you saw it, but that ridiculous keto versus whatever diet and resistance training, and they basically carved up the keto group in, I think it was the 7th week, and they were like, oh yeah, keto's amazing for muscle mass gains. And it's not. It's, they basically did the old school carbo loading protocol of deplete carbs and then super compensate. And on a DEXA scan, that shows up as increased muscle mass or lean body mass. And all it is carbohydrate and water inside your muscle cells, so cell volumization. But when you stop dieting after an aggressive diet like you did, and you use the word there, filled out, it's like, you added back in calories, you added back in carbs, and essentially you gained lean body mass, which we can call muscle mass. It's not myofibrillar protein necessarily, but also any lost muscle mass is highly likely because of this kind of magical term, muscle memory. You can regain lost tissue really, really easily. Building new tissue naturally is very, very hard, but regaining lost tissue, which was one of the confounders in the Longlens study, is super easy. So I think there is a trade-off of just get shredded. And that's if you're not doing it for a bodybuilding / physique show, because you need to peak. And so if you've lost a fair amount of muscle, and then you're going to spend a couple of weeks gaining it back. But in my mind, get there in the most efficient way. Don't try and lose muscle, but do it well, do it fast, do it in a way that suits you. And then even, I saw some stuff about Alberto Nunez. I don't know if you're aware of him.
Yeah, sure.
I assume you are, yeah. From 3DMJ. He gets shredded, but then ups calories, increases them in the final weeks. And for me, that's the best way to do these things. It's like increase your calories, fill out muscle glycogen, but also train better, regain a bit of lost muscle potentially, get there earlier and do that. So, for bodybuilding competitors, there is a lot more fine tuning needed. But for me, going on holiday, getting in shape for summer, all of these different kind of things, and lots of reasons different people diet throughout the year, get shredded, do it as fast as you can realistically maintain, and then go back to, you can regain everything lost in a matter of weeks rather than the 6 months or a year it took you to gain a few pounds of muscle in the first place. So I do think you can push the boat out. One of the biggest issues, and we're talking physiology now, is there is probably a maximal rate of presentation, to do my American accent because it sounds better, a maximal rate of presentation of lipids to the bloodstream for then oxidization within the muscle. So even if you put yourself in a massive deficit, there is a limit on that rate. Now we can potentially speed that rate up through things like caffeine, which we know helps with lipolysis. And people take caffeine thinking it's a fat burner, and it isn't really. It raises your metabolism a little bit. It helps with appetite suppression a little bit, but it does lead to lipolysis. So maybe that helps with the increased rate of presentation of fatty acids to the bloodstream. That will help us to make more of our deficit come from fat as opposed to other lean body mass tissues. So one thing is this maximal rate, when you go above that maximal rate, it will take from lean body mass, but that doesn't mean you're losing muscle mass necessarily. That literally means you might dip into, so what have I lost? I lost 5.9 pounds in 7 days at the start of this diet. I know that's not all fat mass, but I pretty much would categorically state I lost almost no muscle mass in that time. So what else have I lost? Well, I've lost lean body mass, which is carbohydrate and water from the muscle. So if in another 5 to 10 days I do a refeed, I top those stores back up so that if I do overcook it with my deficit, I tap into those. If I was completely glycogen depleted, we know that amino acid oxidation goes up. In the early sports science studies of endurance athletes, we see that in a glycogen depleted state, amino acid oxidation or contribution to energy demands goes up. We don't really want that. So once I get to a fairly glycogen depleted state, I need to either taper my deficit to something that can be fueled solely by body fat, or I refeed, and therefore it gives me this essentially margin for error for a greater deficit. But again, I carb up, I know I'm not gaining any body fat, the scales go up loads, I feel great, I'm loving the fact that I'm eating loaves of bread, and I then go back into a deficit and the scales start going down again, which is hugely motivating for me as a client, individual, people that we work with. So it's understanding all of these nuances that we can actually end up personalizing someone's nutrition really well, based on all of these little factors.
Absolutely. And just for the people who I'm sure curious now, what kind of, so you mentioned you're eating like 1,400 calories, like, I don't know if you're doing it on a deliberate tracked sort of way, but if you do, like, what sort of calculated deficit did you put yourself at? Did you aim for that divided by 15% type of rate with your weight loss?
Yeah, it's funny. Like when we start shining the spotlight on me, you start realizing that I'm a bit of a bro. But for this time, I mean, like I said, I only started 7 days ago. It was just a case of, oh man, I need to diet, and for various different reasons. And so I'm not tracking at all. I might start tracking in a week or two. I just sort of said to myself, I'm just going to eat as little as possible whilst essentially tracking protein only, and then allowing myself to go above. So I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly my calories or any of the splits for that, or even necessarily what deficit I'm in, but I might be in a 12 to 1500 calorie deficit, maybe,
right.
There or thereabouts. I'm not an overly active person. So there's that, but I will pay attention to my protein. So you were talking about Lyle's rapid fat loss stuff, and I know he bases a lot of his work on, say, protein sparing modified fasts. And I've not actually read, he's got his good book on that, hasn't he? I've not actually read that, but I think generally people look at, 2 grams per kilogram body weight protein, and then a little bit of supplementary fats, omega-3s, and then some vegetables. For me, I know I can't maintain that. I just don't like it. I dislike the lack of variety. I dislike the lack of ability to have a little bit of fruit. And there's also some interesting research that shows very low fructose from fruit intake versus more moderate fructose from fruit intake. Body fat loss is greater with a moderate intake. Now, that could literally be an adherence thing, or it could be some interesting signaling stuff going on. So for me, it's a case of I add on 50%. People talk about, rapid fat loss, protein sparing modified fast, 800 calories. So I add on 15% of that, 1200, and see how close I can get to 1200. I often fail, but this is the funny thing. If I fail and I hit 1400 or 1600, because that's one of my things is I do want it to be maintainable for the month. So I don't screw myself over by going, no, I must stick to 1200. I allow myself to go to 1600, which sounds mad, but that's another 30% calories extra if I'm aiming for 12 and I go up to 1600.
Yeah.
And it allows me more flexibility in the construct that I have created. So yeah, I'm anywhere between 12 and 1600 is probably, I can't say for sure where I'm at. I just know that I'm eating similar stuff to what I did last time I tracked, maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah, no, and I really like that actually, because that's exactly how I like to do rapid fat loss phases myself in an untracked way, where I'm trying to eat as little as possible while always staying kind of on the right side of the razor's edge where I don't go insane. So I kind of adjust a lot, because I don't know about you, but when I know, even just I'm aware of the fact that I'm only eating 1,200 calories, that just messes with my head. I just can't stop thinking about the fact all day that, oh my God, I'm on these super low calories. Is that similar to you, or?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I go both ways. And I think I've done some mentoring videos on this, as I think for, say, people like you and I would agree with what you said there, maybe going, oh, it's only 1,200, that's crazy. But I know there are certain times when I can actually go too low calorie, probably. Some days when I was tracking, I would get to 10 p.m. and I was on 600-700 calories. But I had started to get ravenously hungry. Now, in an uncontrolled fashion, i.e. potentially one of our clients, someone we're working with, someone who is not well versed, that would lead to a binge. That would lead to an uncontrolled consumption of calories, because they are pre-bed, they can't sleep because they're too tired, and they binge. And they binge on highly palatable foods, high calorie density, and it's uncontrolled. Whereas if you can take a client, because a lot of people do that, right? A lot of people in the general population go, I want to lose weight, I'm going to eat less. That's it. They don't know about protein, they know nothing. I'm going to eat chicken salad, I'm going to eat an egg for breakfast, or I'm going to eat 4 tablespoons of Greek yogurt for breakfast. I'm going to have 1 apple at mid-morning. I'm going to have a chicken salad at lunch with no sauce, no dressing, no nothing. I'm going to have 1 more piece of fruit in the afternoon, and I'm going to have chicken and broccoli for dinner. That's it. They don't realise that is an unbelievably low-calorie diet. And they then freak out and binge. If they had counted calories, So it's a tool in the toolbox. It's allowing this. They could go, and this is what I do, is I go, oh my goodness, I've done really well today. I am starving hungry, but I'm only on 700 calories. I can eat 500-600 calories. Like, how much rice can you eat for 500-600 calories and a piece of chicken or 30 grams of whey? And so I would eat that and just go, oh man, that's amazing. I can go to sleep now because I was struggling and I knew where to eat up to. Whereas if you have no numbers, no figures, nothing to base it on, how does someone who's not kind of well versed as you and I potentially are, how do they know when to stop? You know, they don't know that they can go and get 100 grams of rice, boil that up to make, you know, 300-400 grams of rice, huge food volume, some vegetables, and then some protein. And it's, you know, essentially double their calories for the day, but they're still in a really nice, decent deficit. So I think there's definitely both ways of doing it. There's I know exactly like you said, sometimes the numbers can just stress you out. And that's where I am at right now. I don't want to track. I don't want to know numbers. I just want to do and lose weight, etc. But I know in maybe a week or two, it'll get to a point where I've become really good at under eating, but then I hit points where I get ravenous, and actually knowing the numbers will be helpful for me because, you know, if you don't measure, you can't manage, or whatever that funny saying is that people say. So there's some insights.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and by the way, we are kind of coming up at the hour mark. I'm just wondering, do you have some more minutes to discuss a couple of other questions? Or
I do. I've got as long as you want.
Oh wow, that's one hell of a privilege. Okay, then I'm just going to abuse your time. Just kidding.
Go for it.
No, so I really like what you're saying there, and I myself am not tracking my calories whatsoever. I do track protein like yourself, but the big caveat there is that I have years of skills and building up a calorie awareness, at least, which is very critical for most people. And then they can decide whether they want to use this tool in the tool belt. But the other thing I wanted to ask you for sure is, getting to the fat loss end result is one side or one part of the battle that we have to win. But the biggest component, of course, is maintaining that achieved result. So maybe we can still go off of your example. So for example, once you will have achieved your fat loss result, maybe you will be a little bit, your baseline level of hunger maybe will be somewhat higher than it normally would be because you just finished a diet. And maybe people at this point are a bit more sensitive to food cues. Their taste buds are a little bit, more reactive to very tasty foods. So how do you generally recommend people to reverse out of a diet? Not reverse in the literal sense, but kind of just renormalizing eating behavior and returning to maintenance.
Yeah, that's a good one. And this is, already touched on with those going into periods of maintenance during a, longer term. For me, mine's just a 4 weeks, and then I don't need to then maintain and then go again. That'll be me done. So for me, in my instance, it's a case of, I try to encourage people that if anyone has done a diet, they know, people start going, oh, my favorite meal of the day is my porridge in the morning with my scoop of chocolate whey protein. But no one starts a diet thinking that. Yeah. No one starts a diet going, oh, I've been love waking up to that. I mean, some weird bodybuilder types do, I know for sure. But you do find joy in more bland food. So I try to encourage people as like, on your diet, you would have loved it if I'd said, your porridge meal, have 2 of those meals for breakfast. Have another snack that's that big. And it's a case of being able to increase calories, and it's that joy. I can't really put it any other way. People who've done diets will know what I mean. And it's a case of, if we're talking numbers, the whole reverse, you mentioned it there, the reverse dieting thing is, I don't understand how people still don't get this, but you have finished a diet, you jump back to maintenance. You don't reverse back from your deficit to maintenance. So let's say with me, I'm going to say 1,500 calories. If I'm going to reverse back to, or let's say my maintenance was 3,000 when I started, probably there will have been a little bit of adaptation in 4 weeks that has occurred. But another thing I tell people is, when you're in a big deficit, you create a pool of, it's like basically, I'm talking about glycogen depletion. You have about 2,000-ish calories, depending on the size of your muscle mass, just of carbohydrate in your muscle. So if you've ended your diet in a somewhat depleted state, you then go back to maintenance, and let's say you miscue maintenance by 200 calories over or 300 calories over. If you are glycogen depleted, you will be storing 300 of those calories. So we're not cheating thermodynamics. Your body is gaining energy, but it's not necessarily storing body fat. It's when we're glycogen depleted and when we're very insulin sensitive, or after exercise, for instance, we get what's called the translocation of GLUT4 to the cell wall, so that basically we get what's called non-insulin dependent glucose disposal. So we don't need to jack up insulin very high. We're really, really easily disposing our carbohydrate, our glucose, into our muscle. So you overshoot by 200 calories, you just become 200 calories worth, 50 grams approximately worth more carbohydrate loaded. So even if I was to jump from 1500 straight back to 3000, even if I've metabolically adapted a little bit, I'm okay for the beginning bit of that. Because I'm using this pool that I've created by being in a deficit. And what happens again, if I'm in a 200 calorie surplus, that's refeeding, that's a diet break. I will start to regain some of my lost metabolism, let's call it. My TDEE, my total daily energy expenditure, will start to creep back up. Now, it might not ever, because I weigh less, it's never necessarily going to go back to the same level. So I don't want to cheat people by, I've heard people on the internet saying you can, if you reverse diet properly, you can maintain on 4,000 calories, whereas before you're maintaining on 3,000. Like, that kind of stuff's not going to happen. But unless you're really, really freaking genetically blessed, there are freaks out there who that somehow happens for, but they are one in a million. And they're never female. Sorry, any female listeners.
Alberto Nunez.
Yeah. So they're the lucky people who we're not, most of us. So, but in that instance, I've jumped back to there. Or you can jump back to your new predicted maintenance for your new lower body weight, which again, your metabolism might be a bit slower that because of these adaptations, but you're going to regain that by being in this small calorie surplus and refeeding phase. So for me, that's the case of go back to that figure, use this factor that you're joyful for eating all of this really decent food. I mean, when you said, have you calculated all of your own deficit, etc. I'm so much less anal about my training and nutrition than I used to be. So I'm probably not a great person for lots of people who are super keen to gain every ounce of muscle they can in their training career kind of scenario. But doing it this way is going to get people most of the benefits that they want. And
and I it's funny what you just mentioned about their porridge and whatever sugar-free chocolate syrup being the high point of their days. It kind of reminded me of I talked about this with Mike Israetel, that there's sort of this hedonic staircase, and when there are certain foods which kind of barely move the needle for you in terms of excitement, and there are foods which move it a little bit, and then there are those that just drive you crazy. And kind of the blessing and the curse at the same time of being in a very dieted state is that basically any food is almost at that point where it just gets you excited. And one thing, I guess, to do is to actually take advantage of this and to not go crazy with the super tasty, palatable foods right after the diet.
Exactly.
Really enjoy the fact that you can actually enjoy these really bland foods, apple and bananas and whatever. Those things will taste like heaven for you right after the diet, right?
Exactly, yeah. And you can just start building these brilliant habits of... What I was kind of saying there a minute ago is, which I lost my way slightly, was I'm really bad. If I don't pay attention to my diet, I will eat 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram protein. I'm shocking. I'm a bit of a carb fiend, and I'm a lazy eater, and I've not got a great appetite. So chowing down on 1.5 chicken breast I'll happily do that when I'm dieting, but when I'm not, I'm just like, can't be bothered. Yeah. So for me, it's even more so the case of, brilliant. I get excited by having a big bowl of rice or these kind of things. So it's using those habits, using this newfound motivation for good, high quality foods, not just cakes, donuts, crap like that. Like, that's what I try and encourage people out of this kind of post-diet binge mentality is have an end game. The end game is not the end of the diet. It's, okay, cool, what am I going to do in the 4 to 8 weeks after that? Oh, cool, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a refeed. That's why I really like the reverse dieting movement, not for the initial crap, quite frankly, that came out of it, but for the idea of you don't diet and then just basically undermine all of what you did by going mad and just binging and then feeling worse for it and actually having quite negative body image views and all of these kind of things. And so, yeah, that all of this encompassed of make the most of, like you said, the fact that your needle moves with these decent high quality foods.
Yeah, and like you said, the reverse diet where you add in whatever, like 5 grams of carbs per week, that's obviously insane, especially when you're just doing it back to maintenance. But if there's one benefit of doing that, is that it builds up behaviors or rebuilds kind of eating behaviors back to normal gradually, which definitely has a benefit. And you just mentioned habits, and that's a big one for me, and definitely one that I wanted to ask you about when you worked with clients, or now in your business when you're working with people, and even in your MNU Nutrition University, which we're going to mention at the end. Still, I've been in this game for a long time, and obviously all of us have our better and worse days. Sometimes, even though I have all the years of conditioning, sometimes I'm sleep deprived, I'm stressed. Those are days when adherence could be harder, but I have certain kind of key habits that I rely on day to day. For example, wake up and just drink 2 or 3 glasses of water. And it's nothing magical, but in a sense, that mini habit almost reminds me of kind of the person that I want to become from a nutrition and fitness kind of standpoint. Like, okay, I'm the person who drinks 3 glasses of water after waking, or starting my meals with veggies. These sorts of mini habits really quickly put me back on track when things are not as optimal as they otherwise would be. Do you have any sort of kind of key habits that you pay attention to coach people towards or guide people towards, especially jump up people for whom these small, simple habits go a really long way?
Yeah, interesting one. One of the things we teach, so within MNU Nutrition Uni, quite a funny thing, people have said, oh, MNU Nutrition Uni, it's like really advanced course, really evidence-based, loads of science, but XYZ course is about the coaching. And it's so funny because we have such a massive element around behavior change and all of the stuff, the counseling process, consultation skills. So I'm going to use your podcast to tell people that's absolute rubbish, that MNU Nutrition Uni doesn't do that. But one of the things within kind of the consultation process and different techniques that we teach is something that I call low-hanging fruit. So with a client, and this is kind of a really broad answer to what you've just said there, is different clients end up having different elements in their life, and low-hanging fruit is small effort for maximum gain. So if you say to someone, look, in your situation, with your lifestyle, with your preferences, you seemingly consume so many calories at this time of day, for instance, or so many calories from liquid sources. Can we find stuff that you enjoy equally that for the rest of your life is going to massively reduce your energy intake? And they might not even have realized that whatever they were getting from Starbucks or whatever had 800, 1,000 calories. And they're like, oh, I just get that one, but I enjoy a whatever, Americano, cappuccino, just as much. And you go, brilliant. For the rest of your life, choose that one because you enjoy it just as much. And if you want to have the other one, fine, but understand that it's got 4 times as more calories. So that's one example. So we would look at every individual in terms of, okay, what is their low-hanging fruit? And therefore, is there something that I'm not going to make them feel restricted for the rest of their life? So the scenario you gave is actually something called identity-based behavior change. I am someone who, not, oh, I'm trying to lose weight, so I eat veg. It's, I'm someone who wakes up and drinks a glass of water, not, oh, I'm doing this diet where you have to wake up and drink a glass of water with some lemon in it. It's completely reframing that to an identity-based behavior change. And when you become that person, it's no longer an effort. Brushing your teeth is not necessarily an effort. It's a habit. It's an identity thing. I am someone who. When you get someone, oh, I'm going to the gym because I'm on a diet and I want to lose weight, versus, oh, do you train? Yeah, I train. Not, do you train? Well, I'm going to the gym because I want to lose weight. And it's not like you can just necessarily instill that, but it's good to have that understanding of, if you can make things easy enough to someone who goes, oh, I always get my friend's drink and he always has an Americano, you've become that person. I always get my friend's drink and he always has a chocolate with froth and whipped cream. You know, you are the person who needs to find something equally as rewarding that you like as much, so you can maintain for the rest of your life. So we do this low-hanging fruit, so it's hard to give a really specific answer. There's all the typical ones of, okay, it is potentially good if someone is particularly hungry in the morning, we would try and encourage them to have a breakfast that had some protein in it. As a snack, if someone is... The other thing about like whey protein shakes, people are like, oh, you drink those, I don't know, steroid shakes. You know, people have this crazy view. They're perfectly happy to drink a bottle of soft drink, which is just, you know, highly refined sugar, calories, etc. But as soon as you say have a protein shake, they're like, I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life. Why not? Because I'm someone who does. I would happily have it as a snack. I know it's satiating. It tastes really nice. They're like, oh, protein shakes taste gross. And it's like, you're either using the wrong brand or, I mean, I know whatever, when I had my first protein shake 16 years ago, it was disgusting. It was lumpy. It was rubbish. It was, you know, it didn't mix. These days, in this day and age, I would choose some of the flavors of protein shakes that I use over, you know, milkshakes in fast food chains. You know, some of them are absolutely amazing. You know, protein bars these days, they're phenomenal. Food science has come on so far. So, I mean, I have had billionaires, some of them richest, most powerful people in the world as clients, and I literally have, I'm not going to give anyone a brand shout out here because no one is sending me free stuff, but I have used particular brands, and these billionaires literally are there on their private jet eating their protein bar instead of the crap that you would usually be consuming. I have changed their identity. They love it. They're like, oh my goodness. One of them actually was a food connoisseur, and he would rate some of the top Michelin star restaurants, and he's there eating these flipping fitness industry bodybuilder 23 grams of protein, low carb protein bars, 199 calorie type things. So all of this stuff is, if you can change their identity to doing any of these little habits that we know help. So another one I often do, and I've obviously got my ebook on intermittent fasting, is for some people, and this is the one I do, when I'm not paying attention to calories, when I'm not doing anything, I stay in relatively good shape now all year round, since I've got over my food issues from being an idiot bodybuilder, is I don't eat when I'm not hungry, and I don't eat for as long as I can in the morning. But the one thing I do is, when I'm hungry, I go to highly satiating. I don't do the thing that, the reason that we observe in research that people who skip breakfast are more overweight is because when it comes to the time that they become hungry, they eat crap. They make crap choices. Whereas if you can coach someone to, you know, they say to you, I'm not hungry when I wake up. You know, dietitians out there are like, you must eat breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. It switches on your metabolism, blah, 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 blah. You say, okay, that's cool. Don't eat. Because in the research, people who skip breakfast, seemingly in a controlled environment, do not have an increase in hunger, do not eat more. So therefore, when you do eat, because you will get hungry at some point, and you won't be at home where people tend to have better food choices available, be prepared. Have a protein bar, have a protein shake, have a meal in a Tupperware that you've got with you. And, you know, that is something that we've coached hundreds of people to do, just to be prepared for and not eating any calories in the morning. And they're like, oh yeah, I eat a really big lunch and I have a massive dinner and with my children and my family, and for the first time ever I'm able to maintain my body weight. Why? Because I'm skipping breakfast in a conscientious way.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant. And first of all, I love how you phrase the question of what is your low-hanging fruit, and it just reminded me that I'm inclined to name this episode "What's Your Low-Hanging Fruit," but I'm afraid that nobody would click on this, so it will have a different name. The other thing it reminded me of is when people demonize artificial sweeteners. Like any friend that we have who has no idea about nutrition will readily tell us that aspartame is dangerous, but they have no problem consuming, you know, table sugar by the mouthful. It's almost like this reasoning of, well, I don't eat artificial sweeteners because they are dangerous, so I'll just eat sugar because at least I know that's bad. So it's that one's.
Or they smoke. Even worse, they're like, oh, you're not having a diet soft drink, are you? Whilst they're there smoking a cigarette. It's like, what?
That's actually pretty common. That's crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
And, it's how you mentioned that people who typically fail, for example, at fasting are those who will eat crap afterwards. And it just reminded me how certain strategies might be more applicable for some people than others. So, for example, this whole rapid fat loss thing that we talked about, probably you would agree with the fact that, people who have a prior disordered eating issues or have these binge purge cycle type of problems, for them, it would probably not be appropriate. And it just reminded me that just interacted with a guy yesterday who mentioned that he tuned into one of your Q&A webinar things, and he asked you about what to do if someone is struggling to maintain their body composition because they go on binges too frequently and things of that nature. And that your advice was to seek help, seek counseling. And I would be just interested that as you, who is an educator, has various platforms of helping people and creating resources for people, what is the point at which you're deferring people to someone else when you say, okay, you clearly need help from a qualified professional? How do you draw this line in your own practice?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I think it's one of the reasons why Mac Nutrition Uni has become worldwide respected, because we have such a big element of dealing with scope of practice of coaches, trainers, these kind of things. And, we set out to help nutritionists and personal trainers, and we now have GPs, general practitioners, MDs, emergency doctors, dietitians, physiologists, pharmacists signing up to MNU because of all of these different factors, and people now putting on job specs for jobs. With MNU only launched less than 2 years ago, and it's taken the world by storm. Why? Because because it's evidence-based, but it's gained acceptance in typically places which would be very hard to break into, because we care about this really important area of first doing no harm, which is obviously this kind of medical practitioner kind of golden rule, first do no harm. And I think a bit with the fitness industry, you get someone who 1 minute has never trained, never dieted, never had any qualifications. They do a show, they employ a coach to help them do a show, they maybe place top 3, and then the next minute they've got an Instagram profile, they're giving out nutrition plans, and giving people the same diet that they were on, and whatever, but they're giving people, they've got no idea of a scope of practice, they've got no idea of triggers that, like you've just said there, they have no idea that maybe if someone comes and says, I've been binging and purging, they're like, oh yeah, well just do my diet and it will help you lose fat. They've got no idea. So within MNU, we've got this big element of scope of practice. One of our tutors on MNU actually is an advisor for the NICE guidelines, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence guidelines on eating disorders. And we're not teaching people necessarily to become eating disorder counselors, but we are teaching people to spot stuff. We are, there's this phrase we use about teaching people to be appropriately curious about things that clients report. Like, I know myself, I totally hold my hands up that I was not aware of this after, a degree and 2 postgraduates from some of the best academic universities in the country. I was not aware of these things. I was not aware of an athlete saying, oh yeah, I'm on a diet, I'm doing really well, I'm getting shredded, and me going, okay, we're going to go back to maintenance calories, and that client just binging for a week, that athlete binging for a week and going, yeah, I didn't have any specific focus, I wasn't hungry, so then I just went a bit over the top, and I was like, I'm there going, haha, oh, that's annoying, okay, well, let's diet again, we're gonna have to diet a bit harder. I didn't actually realize that that's an issue. That is a restrict binge cycle. They are not able to do the moderate. They are not able to do anything but restrict. They have no control unless they are being overly controlling, i.e. restricted with themselves. So, there's this big factor of learning about cues, learning about the telltale signs of the different eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder. So, we teach those on MNU, not to help people cure people, and that's a massive thing. We teach people to first do no harm, don't use protocols that are highly likely to lead to disordered eating, And B, if you spot these things, we need to start thinking about referring to either a dietitian who specializes in eating disorders, not just any dietitian, because any dietitian isn't good enough, or to someone who has the appropriate qualifications in psychological support, counseling, even psychiatry, which is obviously a qualified medical doctor then with a psychological training. And it's this big factor. And actually, when my eyes got open to this, you start to realize that the world of the health and fitness industry is unfortunately plagued by disordered eating. And I will hold my hands up and said I added to that with previous people I worked with, because I didn't know, I wasn't appropriately trained. And now I'm righting my wrongs with MNU and trying to help the industry be better. But yeah, these are really important things, and it's like they're not the sexy things to talk about. So it is kind of cool that you've brought it up, that to be spoken about, and it is just something that people need to be aware of, and we need to be more aware and more sensitive to the fact that, especially the physique, like you said, you used the word insane. It's like, it's driving me insane. And we all, at the end of a diet, when I was competing, I competed for 5 years, I think, in 7 or 8 shows. And it sends you crazy. It sends you to a place of a really, really weird relationship with food. And even the most psychologically strong of individuals, it sends to a place that's unnatural for them. But for people who are, like you said, someone who's got a poor relationship with food, you probably wouldn't put them on a rapid fat loss. It's like, yeah, those people are the one who are really, really at risk of this.
Yeah. No, I just find it really fascinating how, because in fitness and especially body composition oriented fitness questions, one of the most fundamental way in which we are tweaking and modifying things is by tweaking food behavior, and food as being this really profound biological driver. We are just fiddling with the knobs, and then we just develop these disordered patterns. And it's not a surprise. I mean, I always say that if somehow, by manipulating how much oxygen we take in with breathing, if we started manipulating that, then people would develop all kinds of psychological disorders with breathing. But luckily that doesn't happen because there is no need for that. But I think it's, I guess it's relieving for people to hear that even someone like you, say that you had your fair share of issues in this regard. So I think it will be good for people to hear. So since you mentioned Mac Nutrition a couple of times, maybe just let people, for those of you who have been living under a rock, just up to speed, what the hell is Mac Nutrition, and what can they expect if they sign up for that service and education platform?
So Mac Nutrition Uni is our 12-month online evidence-based nutrition course. Leads to people to be able to practice as an MNU Certified Nutritionist. And it's funny, the story behind it, we were solely going to be focusing on the UK initially. And when we launched just under 2 years ago, our first ever intake, we had people from 25 different countries. And it's just, it's madness how it's gone. So we are still almost 2 years on playing catch up with regards to getting people insured. So we focused initially on the UK of getting people insurance to practice as an MNU Certified Nutritionist. And, then we were like, oh, crap, we've had all these people sign up from America. So we went and sorted out insurance to practice in America. And, there's this whole thing of there's certain states in America where there's really kind of weird, stringent laws. There's about 4 states that we have to tell people from there about the difference in rules. And then we got Canada sorted. And then we've just, continued in Ireland. Actually, I should have mentioned that one being so close to home. And, a big one we're trying to do is Australia. I'm saying up front now, we don't have Australia yet, but we have loads of people from Australia on the course because they know that it's going to benefit their business working with clients. They're just not yet insured to practice an MNU Certified Nutritionist, but we've got doctors from Australia on the course. And yeah, you can study from anywhere in the world. You can do it alongside a full-time job. It's in my mind, and I don't really feel bad saying this, the best course in the world. I don't see a course that even touches it. And, that might sound incredibly arrogant, but I never set out to create the world's best course. It's just kind of happened. The the way we've done it, the amount of effort we've put into it, the kind of the care and attention for everything from every single lecture. You know, people watch a 90-minute lecture and 100 hours of work went into that lecture. And there's, you know, with all of the reading of the research behind it, the stripping out of stuff you don't need to know. You know, I've done years and years and years and years, 7-8 years of academic study. I learned so much crap I never needed to know. So much biochemistry, so much information that never helped me help someone change their life. So we stripped everything out, and that took a lot of time to go, is that of any use? Do we need to include it? And then, put it together. And then next step, what's the further reading? How can we support the differentiated learning? If someone is a career changer, you know, we've got lawyers, bankers, beauticians, journalists, who want to change career. They love nutrition. They've found a passion for it. They want to change career. So we're having to take them from zero. But at the same time, we've got these MDs, dietitians, MSc nutritionists, and we want them to enjoy the course. We want them to find out more. But I think a key part of that is how practically focused it is. You know, you've got, you know, for instance, someone like me teaching you from 10 years of experience of working with clients. I'm talking to you about whatever, biochemistry or research methods even, or, you know, we our new intake in March, they've just done their research methods lecture, and people are like, oh my goodness, this was amazing, I love this lecture. And I'm there thinking, flipping it, that's so boring. It's research methods. But they're like, no, because of this and the how you've contextualized it, and I've realized that this is going to help my learning long term. So all of that stuff, down to the homeworks, like the homeworks are designed to either make you a better practitioner or make you a more viable business. So if people are going self-employed, one of the homeworks, which are optional actually, so that's something worth saying, for people to be an adult and go, have I already got this? Is this going to help me be better? Or is this something that I can use to give to clients or work with clients myself, or even put on my social media? You know, some of them are literally create this and put it on your social media. We, as part of the homework, we will proofread it or do whatever. And you put it on your social media and get clients because you have helped people for free, but you've done it to pass your qualification. So we've literally thought about everything. To every single module, there's a key or core skill at the end of the module, which we think if you do these 6 core skills, I'm not going to give them away, they will make you a phenomenal practitioner. Right. So yeah, everything. I mean, that's what it is. It's our next intake is September this year. We do 2 intakes a year, March and September. People always message me, oh, I really want to get on it. Can I not just start now? And it does make me feel really bad, but I've made the commitment that it is, you start the course with your classmates, with your cohort, and you go start to finish. There is a deadline, there is an exam period, a 4-week exam period. And so that people just don't, you know, sign up for the course, let it just sit, never complete it. It's a, you know, it's almost like that thing of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You know, we lead people to the water, but we also make it really, really attractive to drink, to get the most out of it. And I think that's why if you go on the internet, you look at the hashtag #MacNutritionUni, you speak to people who are on the course or have graduated, and you see the things that honestly daily I'm humbled by the comments that people are making. It's, you know, I feel like the luckiest person in the world.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and just how you laid out everything that's going on there, I have. It's not surprising at all why you would say that this is the best course in the world at the moment. So props to you, and it's really amazing what it has grown out to be, and I can only imagine what it's going to evolve into in the next couple of years. So really amazing. Besides this, is there any other resource or availability that you would like people to point towards?
Yeah, I suppose I've just, for the first time ever in my life, I've decided to start. I'm not a great content creator, as funny as that sounds. If people are always messaging me saying, oh, I got this question, I googled Martin MacDonald and whatever, and they're like, I couldn't find anything. And it's because I've been so busy doing stuff, I suppose. Creating MNU, for instance, is a big one, and being on podcasts, but I did start my career writing articles and this, that and the other, but I haven't really archived it. Like if you go on various forums around the internet, I've probably written 50,000 posts or even more, but nothing is in one place. So the thing I would say to people is I've committed this year to start creating content, and a lot of that will go out on what I've called my Mac Mail newsletter. So, I mean, I'll send you the link, Abel, so you can put it somewhere to signpost people. But I think as well, my Instagram, I'm there daily kind of doing polls and education for people, and I'll link to my newsletter from there. But I would say to people, sign up to the newsletter. Go on the Mac Nutrition Uni website, mac-nutritionuni.com, stick your email address in, and we send out the occasional free lecture, like actual MNU content lecture. When I speak at conferences or expos, I'll occasionally film them and give those away for free. So it's, we're not going to brainwash anyone into signing up for a course they don't want to. If you want to get free education like this podcast, following me in those places is probably a good idea.
Great, and we will make sure to link to all of those sources that you just mentioned. And with that, Martin, thank you so much for taking the time today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a comment and subscribe if you watch this on YouTube. If you listen to this on iTunes, please leave a rating to help this stuff grow. SoundCloud and Podbeam, you can just follow me to be notified on future episodes. And to be a contributing member of this podcast, join the Sustainable Self-Development Facebook group where you can drop ideas about future podcasts. I very often ask my listeners for tips and advice on who to get on next. So if you're interested in getting into discussions like that, be sure to join the Facebook group. And if you don't want to go through the searching process, just click one of those links in the show notes/video description. It is all there. All right, thanks for hanging around up until now, and see you next time.